what if I told you that a seemingly harmless habit like stress eating or craving and eating is silently doing harm to your body and causing metabolic disorders in your body? And there are bursts of insulin that are released, causing a lot of insulin resistance. And for people who are not even diabetic, this could be a metabolic game changer when we understand how our eating behaviors affect our body. So, I'm Dr. Sumeet Arora. I'm a pediatric and adolescent endocrinologist, diplomat of American Board of Pediatric Subspecialties, and I work at a renowned tertiary setup, and I'm leading the division there. And I have a very special guest with me today, Miss Shannon Davis. She is a registered dietitian with 18 years of experience specializing in metabolic health and a vast experience in sports nutrition, bariatric surgery, organ transplantation, and much more. Welcome, Shannon, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for being here. And I would like to know about your journey.
Well, thank you for having me. Well, my journey started originally I wanted to be an equine orthopedic surgeon, believe it or not. I'm a little country girl that grew up riding horses and rodeoing and wanted to I love all animals and wanted to save them all. And so after I got through 4 years of undergrad in animal science, I just knew that um it wasn't gonna be a great career because I would never be able to make a living saving all the animals, whether people paid me or not. So, my second love was nutrition, and so I got a degree in dietetic, and at the time I was, dating someone that had type 1 diabetes, and so I just knew that my passion was going to be from that point on, truly helping people that struggle with diabetes, and I got to live like it every day. And so, throughout my internship as a dietitian, I did a stint in nephrology, and that just sort of tapped into my heartstrings as well, seeing those people that were so sick. So I've spent most of my career in nephrology and diabetes. I did some organ transplant, like you mentioned. Um, but throughout my whole career, I never really felt fulfilled. I'm doing what I'm taught, which is, talking to people about nutrition, meal plans, reviewing lab, but they're not thriving. They're existing. And every time I would meet with somebody, you know, w we would talk about a plan, we would go over what's currently going on, and we would come up with a plan that was based on, as you know, all these equations that somebody comes up with about how our body's supposed to magically fit in to this closed loop system where what we put in could be less than what comes out, or yes, so that people stay lean and felt and healthy. And our idea of health is lean and slim. Well, you and I both know that that's so wrong. I really kind of went down the whole rabbit hole of doing things differently than what I've been taught. I mean, I get very odd look and not so nice comments from other fellow dietitians because they think I'm cray cray about how I approach nutrition now. But I will tell you this, since 2018 is sort of when I really got very passionate and very curious about low carb, keto, intermittent fasting, oxalate, which is something that, what do you mean don't eat spinach? I thought spinach was healthy. Well, yeah, but if you eat too much, those kidney stones that you've been having, would you ever thought they came from your health food? So it's really given me a whole different view or approach to how I look at all food and how I look at all diseases. And I truly, without a doubt, believe that we could end many, many, many things that we are faced with today if we change what and how we ate. Despite if even if there were no medications, because I throw that out there to my patients all the time. I'm like, What happens if you can't go fill your insulin? What happens if you can't get metformin anymore? That Ozempic, what happens when it out of stock? What are we gonna do? We're gonna change what and how we eat, which is what we should be doing the first time.
I'm loving this. I'm absolutely loving this. So, I mean, I'm liking the way we're going in terms of our thought process that is now changing and moving away from medications. And you're bang on right. Like we used to have obesity clinics, and I do run some obesity clinics here too. And yes, there's always something missing. And whatever said and done, like, there's this missing puzzle that we have not yet been able to solve. And there is a lot different approach that we need in terms of what is it that will work in terms of improving our metabolism. So let's dive deep into this, and we're going to have much better discussions, and we're going to have all the controversial discussions today, and let's look into it more. So let's bust some myths, Shannon. There's this conception among the general public that sugar is the one that is causing diabetes. Everybody thinks that okay, I stop putting sugar in my coffee, in my tea, and I don't eat sugar anymore, so I'm not at risk of diabetes. How much truth is there to that, and what's more to the story in that?
Well, I think that that's a huge part. Um, and so it's funny that you say that because I have when I take like a food diary from someone, oh, I eat no sugar because they associate sugar with sweet. But after we discuss, okay, that avocado toast you had this morning, that bread converts to sugar, your pasta, your rice, your crackers, your french fries, um, all of these things turn to sugar in the body. They're just starch molecules, that are held together, glucose molecules held together and form these starches. So people don't comprehend that if it's not sweet, it's sugar. Even fruit, fruit is hailed as this all fantastic thing, but it's nature's candy. And so we have to be careful with fruit as well. It's diabetes, Dr. Ben Dickman is one of my mentors and, friends, and so, you know, him and Dr. Jason Fung, I was listening to them this morning, and, the conversation is, you know, it's really crazy that type 1 and type 2 diabetes, they're both called diabetes because they're disease of opposite. They're a disease of not enough insulin, type 1, and then there's a disease of too much insulin type 2. So sugar/carbs are part of the problem. But the other problem with diabetes is insulin. You can't have type 2 diabetes without having too much insulin. And so I think there's a misconception. You're the endocrinologist. You can better correct me on here. But, you know, so many people with type 2, or talking about type 2, is they feel like their pancreas doesn't make enough insulin. And that does happen years and years and years into that. But when we're looking at someone that's newly diagnosed, and you may frown upon what I'm going to say, but I don't believe in pre-diabetes. I believe you're diabetic or you're not, because the difference in pre-diabetes and diabetes is just a tenth of a number. And who's to decide that 10th? What we need to be looking at is a fasting insulin that needs to be happen 10 to 15 years prior to somebody becoming diabetic. And so we check A1Cs, and while your A1C is beautiful, your labs look great, you are not at risk for diabetes. What's going on in the background is the whole time our fasting insulin is doing this. So we would serve better to our patients as clinicians if we got fasting insulin checked. The eating every 2 to 3 hours, focusing on a low-fat diet, high in fruits and vegetables and whole grain has done nothing but get people sick. And, insulin, like I mentioned, you have to have too much insulin. Our cells become too full. They stop responding to that insulin. So it's a hyperinsulinemia process. But what causes the hyperinsulinemia? Eating too many carbohydrates, whether they're sweet or savory, and eating them too frequently. And our cells, in order to survive, they stop responding. They're too full, they can't hold. It's like a woman versus a man traveling.
Right, absolutely, Shannon. So, like, if you think about it, insulin is an anabolic hormone, and all this that you're mentioning, like the frequency of eating, is going to lead to those insulin spikes, and the more insulin spikes that our cells are exposed to, like you mentioned, that these are unnecessary fuels, and ultimately it's going to lead to a metabolic shift, and then everything is going to convert into fat and we're just storing energy where we're not spending that much. And so, yes, this hyperinsulinism can be caught quite early. So, along the same lines, let's talk about, what are the hidden symptoms or what are those silent symptoms that anybody with insulin resistance will experience. So if you talk about it, diabetes or pre-diabetes, like, we were talking about, it just creeps in, but that the process has already started long back. So would there be something that we can look at in terms of something the body is experiencing
Sure.
or some telltale signs that would be very obvious that should not be missed by people?
Yeah,
Maybe we could take some action way early on.
absolutely. So, hypertension has been given a salt name. It's not a salt problem for the most part. There are people a small population that it is. For the most part, hypertension is an insulin problem. Fatty liver. It's funny. I look back when I was in organ transplant in 2007. We never talked about fat. I mean, we never talked about sugar. We always talked about quit eating fat, quit eating fat, quit eating fried food. All these people coming in with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And we never talked about sugar. We never talked about carbohydrates. High triglycerides, which never get talked about, is a sign of insulin resistance. Skin tag, right? Acanthosis nigricans, the darkening of the neck. But in females, PCOS, that's never really talked about as an insulin problem. Men, erectile dysfunction. How much money could we save on the little blue pill or the purple pill, whatever it's called, if we corrected insulin? Neuropathy, gout. Gout is never talked to as far as an insulin problem, right? High cholesterol. I mean, I mentioned the triglycerides, but it's diabetes is the no brainer. Obesity, but what about hangry? We always, if you can't go 2 hours without eating, you've got a problem, right? If you're tired right after you eat, you have a problem. But here's one that, what about autoimmune condition, thyroid, right? We never talk about thyroid in relation to insulin resistance. I just learned last night that the thyroid gland cannot become insulin resistant. I didn't know that. I thought the thyroid gland could, but apparently it cannot. Um, but irregular hair growth, can be a problem. There's so anxiety and depression, the gut, right? We never think about that, but all of these things, truly sleep apnea, right? That's likely an insulin problem. It's secondary, but these things that we would never consider ever as an insulin problem are insulin problem.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And then this generalized vague feeling of
Yeah.
not feeling good, not feeling too up to it, having just poor energy. All these could be just insulin resistance problems. And right bang on that, that the darkening of the neck that everybody is carrying, almost everybody these days has it. And if we just were to like spot it, like, a few years before before the diabetes happened, and maybe we can take action on it, we would be preventing a lot of diabetes right from the start.